One. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Inside Movies Galore. I'm one of your hosts, but we are continuing our themed month of Meet the Cast, and Mo is just so happy and go lucky to be the lucky chap of the day to be able to share with us some little bit personal films. And why don't you tell us a little bit about this second film that you have for us tonight?
All right. So our main feature of the evening is the absolute classic sci-fi comedy film Interspace. This was directed by Dante. It was produced by Michael Fennell. Had a screenplay by Jeffrey Boehm and Chip Prosser, based on a story by Chip Prosser. It stars Dennis Quaid, Martin Short, Meg Ryan, Kevin McCarthy, and Vernon Wells, among others. It's got music by Jerry Goldsmith, cinematography by Andrew Laszlo. It was produced by Amblin Entertainment. A lot of us, that watched movies in the 80s and the 90s, remember those guys. And it was distributed by Warner Bros. It had a release date of July 1st of 1987. And this is definitely not my first time watching this film, obviously, because I suggested it. This continues the theme that we started with The Last Starfighter tonight of, sci-fi sort of comedy films, I guess, that were done by people I associate with horror movies almost exclusively, but are decidedly not horror films. You know what I mean? Obviously, we're not going to kick this off with my first impressions because that'd be rude. What about you, Dave? Is this your first time watching Innerspace?
No. In fact, when I first came back from college, I roomed with my best friend and his fiance in our first apartment together, and this was one of her favorite films, his significant others, and we watched it several times actually. So this is one of the films that I can actually fairly say that I like Martin Short's comedy in. He's kind of offbeat and I guess was more rowdy before this, and
rowdy.
I fairly liked it.
Yeah, dude, it's like right there at the top for me. Like this, Captain Ron and what's that movie? Clifford.
Captain Ron was awesome.
I don't know. When I was growing up, it was pure luck. I love that movie when I was a kid. Good times.
But I like the fact that it also is fairly similar to Irwin Allen's Fantastic Voyage. So.
Oh yeah, very much.
Oh yeah.
Very cool.
I was I was very entertained by this watching, and it's been a while since I've seen it. So thank you for picking this as a choice.
Oh, no problem, man. They just felt like they would go good together. What about you there, Jake? Is this your first time, or what are your overall thoughts?
Well, I tell you, once again, we look at these fun creations. Like, I noticed Jeffrey Boehm's name in the credits, and I was like, I know that name, and I know I'm going to kick myself, and I'm kicking myself now. He was the creator of one of the greatest shows ever, The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr.
There it is.
And he also wrote Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Funny Farm, The Witches of Eastwick, the first 3 Lethal Weapon movies. I mean, that's not a bad filmography there. This was definitely my first time, to be honest. I grew up as a fan of Martin Short. I don't think I'd ever heard of it. Well, I'd heard of it, but I never associated this film with Martin Short. Never. And I saw he starred in it, and I was like, huh? Meg Ryan, Dennis Quaid, and Martin Short starred in a movie? I didn't know this. So this was new to me, and there were some issues. There are some definite leaps of logic, which we'll get to as we go.
Yes.
Dennis Quaid's character definitely comes off as a holy ass at the beginning of the film. But overall, it's a pretty fun movie. I mean, I really like Martin Short's character in this one. You know, Meg Ryan did her typical late 80s love interest sort of thing that she was extraordinarily cute, and she's a good actress, so no complaints there. It was kind of interesting. It was, as I commented on the thread, I don't think I'd ever seen Dennis Quaid this manic in a movie before. So that was kind of an interesting change of pace. And this one, I did note the music, and I thought the music was used quite amusingly at times. And then when I found out this was an Oscar winner, I was like, what?
Yeah.
That was a fun surprise.
Was it an Oscar winner, or was it?
It won the
Oscar
Oscar
nominated?
Yeah.
It won for visual effects. Yes. Yeah.
So, Forrest, I guess since we're in the first impressions here, is this your first time with Interspace? And what, if so or if not, what were your thoughts on it, bro?
As a matter of fact, it was. I mean, Joe Dante. I've seen a number of his movies a number of times. The Gremlins movies, Small Soldiers, The Burbs, Rock and Roll High School. But until this past weekend, I had never seen Interspace. I knew of it. I had seen. I would see commercials for it on TV, like when if it was like playing on a Saturday afternoon or something. But I never got around to watching it until this past weekend, and I'm glad I did. It's for a lot of the same reasons. It's a fun movie. It's a fun movie. It's very very well made, very funny. I would say as far as Martin Short's concerned, up to this point, for me, I would say Three Amigos is the one. Three Amigos and Mars Attacks that I've seen the most of his, or my favorites of his. But yeah, it's a lot. But yeah, it's definitely got all the workings of like a good comedy and a good summer blockbuster.
Hell yeah,
blockbuster.
What about you, Roger? Is this your first time with Interspace?
Yeah, not only is it my first time, but I just kind of was doing some quick research on Martin Short. This is like my first movie that I've actually seen Martin Short in.
Wow.
So this is like a double completely new venture. And of course, I was kind of intrigued by it because it kind of reminds me very strongly of the Fantastic Voyage. I had watched that. Ironically, I watched that recently. I just heard about the movie, and I said, "Well, it might be kind of interesting," And I must admit, I did like the film quite a bit immensely versus the other film. So I do like this film.
Fair enough.
I did like the acting and all that. I know they're going to talk about this later on, but I was really intrigued by the film. So I really thank you there, Mo. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, I'm glad that it lived up to me, man. I mean, I thought doing some fantastical science fiction and then some equally fantastical science fiction, but more Earth-based would be like a good idea.
Actually, I just want to get a couple extra thoughts in here. Years ago, I remember reading. I remember back in the mid '90s, DC Comics would have a section of their comics where they would do casting calls for their dream casting calls.
Yeah,
right.
For movies and TV shows. Back when superhero movies were kind of a pipe dream, and they had suggested Dennis Quaid as Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern.
Perfect.
And so this is before I saw Interspace, and now after watching this movie, I'm like, oh, so that's why I wanted Quaid to be the Green Lantern.
I could see that.
Yep, and
Wisecracker, Wisecracker kind of character.
I could see him as like the second generation. What's it? The Atom.
Yep.
As well.
And that's true too. Also, like for me, growing up, Meg Ryan was never really my parents were not Meg Ryan fans, so I didn't really have like any emotion. I know she was considered America's sweetheart, around this time, but like lately I've been kind of getting in between this podcast and another one that I'm on called Under the Radar. I've been getting slowly introduced to Prime Meg Ryan, and seeing like what her appeal, like interesting to see what her appeal was.
See, I grew up on Top Gun, so she was definitely in at least one movie I grew up on.
She's pretty blisteringly cute back in these days.
Right.
Yeah.
The Girl Next Door.
Am I correct? She was with the You Got Mail and the Sleepless in Seattle,
Right.
and the other kind of situation comedy thing.
Right.
So
This is definitely way before she decided to medically transfer her face to some different things. She actually publicly changed her face to the point of putting something of like a cleft in her chin and like some facial features or whatnot. And I just haven't really liked
before.
Yeah,
that stuff aside,
all
this
the
movie is a cool
surgery.
example of her in like maybe a little bit different of a role.
So I'm just going to completely throw out just randomly while we're talking about the actors. I do have an unwatched copy of Captain Ron, so someone needs to pick that soon.
Solid time, Captain Ron. I highly recommend it.
Right.
Also,
But
glass
anyway.
high in there, Roger. So another scene where someone takes out their eyeballs. That's...
Oh no, God, man, that's another one like that.
And we did already cover Rock and Roll High School back in the day, so y'all need to check that out. Yeah.
And I think we covered the sequel too, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
We did, yeah.
Rock and Roll High School.
Are we missing anybody's first impressions here?
Mine.
Yeah.
Did we hear yours?
Okay. Well, not yet. I'm saving. I'm a gentleman,
okay.
bro. Okay, I'm a gentleman.
Well,
Ladies first.
I did see Interspace at least once in the 80s, but because I remember a lot of that. And Meg Ryan, you were talking about like in the last movie, childhood crushes. Meg Ryan was mine as a child. I always just I don't know, just that girl next door persona always appealed to me, and
She's got that cute little overbite, you know.
I don't remember much about this particular movie from when I was younger watching it. But I remember watching it again in the 90s and getting more into it, and then of course watching it again as an adult because look, that's an Oscar winner. I need to see that again. And so I ended up getting in the collection with this Meg Ryan collection, which had, 3 great films and 1 not so great film. It had this one, it had You've Got Mail, it had Joe versus the Volcano, which is way underrated.
Super
That's a fun one.
Underrated.
Actually, that's the one I just saw recently for the first time.
Classic.
It's a great film. It is. And I remember actually seeing your post on it and going, it's right on that collection. And also The Women, which I didn't know. But this one to me was a fun film. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed all the acting in it, and it was just was an enjoyable thing to come back to. Not as classic to me as The Last Starfighter. It doesn't have that nostalgia feel to it for me.
Not quite, yeah.
But it is a fun film and it is enjoyable.
Right.
So basically, this is one that I grew up definitely seeing off and on. You know, I'd seen it as a lad, you know, but right around that same time,
it's a wee little moling,
right? Just a little no squatch fucking running around there. But it was like right around the same time as Last Starfighter, where, you know, I kind of latched onto it and realized, holy shit, this is like a movie by Joe Dante, who did obviously Gremlins and like The Howling, which are huge movies for me. So finding out that he did also like this weird sci-fi movie that I remember growing up with was intriguing, man. So that's why these two are kind of linked, and also why they're sort of important, because they had those second lives with me. You know what I mean? Like, there were movies I saw as a kid, and I was like, yeah, those were pretty rad, you know. But knowing that it was like these horror dudes going outside their wheelhouse and doing something else also awesome really like stoked me up, because I also had nostalgia for him. Good.
Did we mention before that he directed episodes of Erie, Indiana? I had forgotten that.
Also, Legends of Tomorrow.
Yeah, he did one episode of that. Yeah.
Who, Joe Dante?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, right, but I mean, it's like 15-year-old me knew him because of Gremlins and The Howling.
I haven't seen Erie, Indiana probably since it was on the air. I need to track that show down.
That's like
good.
35 years old, though. I watched the same show back in the day as well.
Yeah,
It was a long time ago.
That's Erie, Indiana is such a good example of a show that if it dropped now, it would go for like 7 seasons. It was amazing.
It definitely was an unusual show. Much like watching amazing stories.
There you go.
Oh, God,
Roger.
I want to see that again. That is a series I need to see again, and they need to come out with a complete series set on.
They have come out with an Owl Region Blu-ray set that is quite pricey, but it is a legit release.
God damn it, Dave! This is America. Unless it's been released here, it doesn't count. Complete series,
right
now. You're infringing on my rights.
I'm sorry, but all region counts.
These films, I did like Gremlins. I like The Howling. Interspace, I liked it. The Burbs, that was a funny show. Yeah,
The Burbs, I love. I kind of almost
we
like
haven't
that.
we haven't done Gremlins yet, have we?
Probably
Or
not.
the Birds.
That has to happen.
Have you guys done
I would say,
Night?
I would say Christmas. Oh, wait, I would say Christmas is. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I said Christmas.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, The Burbs and Fright Night are a dope double feature because
I never did see them.
Oh,
I
man,
never
what a
did
shock.
see The Burbs.
I thought it would be like a horror movie for some reason, but it turned out to be a comedy.
It kind of is a horror movie though, in a way, but it's like a social anxiety, like neighborhood horror movie,
Right.
I remember also watched Fright Night, and I was scared out of my scared of my pants. I'm like, what is this? Oh my god!
It's kind of The Burbs though when you watch it. Like it's the same thing. It's just The Burbs doesn't have vampires,
Yeah.
Same backlog.
I love it.
Good times.
I forgot where we even were with this, but yeah.
We didn't even start talking about the show yet. It was directed by Joe Dante, and I didn't realize what he did, so it kind of got me a little bit off kilter.
Oh, no worries, man. Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of enjoyed this movie, but I really started enjoying it with that revelation, and I think it pairs nicely with Last Starfighter. I think they complement each other well in different ways, while having a lot in common.
You're right. They complement each other quite nicely.
Basic gist of the story here is we got Dennis Quaid playing Tuck Pendleton, who's kind of like this sauced up Navy pilot who's a crack pilot, but kind of down on his luck. He's having to hand over the torch to the new spacefaring generation, and he's not sure quite what to do with himself. Turns out he's got this commission to take part in this research involving rabbits and all types of stuff that we don't know about right at the beginning of the movie. But essentially he makes an ass out of himself at like this NASA party, and proper ass of himself, but also pretty much owns that dude to those wine racks. So I don't know. I'm torn about how I feel about this thing. Like, man, you're being an asshole, but that was fucking sweet.
They like end up duking it out in the kitchen, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So we're introduced to Tuck Pendleton, who's this down on his luck pilot, just being a cantankerous asshole and going around and doing things that those types of dudes do. He's got a super hot girlfriend in Meg Ryan, who's like a reporter, if I remember right.
Journalist.
And basically they hooked up the first time they had interviewed with each other and have been going at this ever since. But she's at her breaking point, especially with this latest display. She's the fuck out of there and leaves him with his ass flapping in the wind. And
I broke my toe.
His ass literally flapping in the wind, as a matter of fact, because he too had his towel with him, but he did not give it the proper care it needed.
I think it was a sheet, actually.
Yeah.
But,
Oh, yeah, you might be right.
Pretty much the beginning of this movie is like, whoa, this dude's drunk as hell. Man, he's kind of being an asshole. Is that Dick Miller? And then he's naked. And that's pretty much the first few minutes of this. And then, maybe interspersed in there is like, damn, Meg Ryan was cute in the 80s.
You got to admit, though, with a name like Tuck Pendleton and with a girlfriend that hot, he's an asshole.
Tuck Pendleton sounds like an awesome clothesline or a type of whiskey. You know what I mean? So what are you guys' thoughts initially on this whole intro to the movie here? We got this dude. We saw his house. We become intimately familiar with him.
Well, it's like I said, you hear all the rumors and the stories about Randy Quaid being totally crazy. It's weird seeing Dennis be kind of in that ballpark. But honestly, he reminded me a lot of Jack Nicholson in those scenes. Like, I think I commented on the thread, like sort of like a Nicholson, Nick Cage sort of hybrid, because he was almost as manic as Nick Cage, but he had the grin, like the Nicholson grin. And I was like, I didn't know Dennis Quaid could do that.
I was thinking the same thing when he was walking into that military banquet thing. I was like, you could just picture him in a purple suit with that smile on his face. He could have played a very convincing Joker, to be honest.
He could have,
like that.
Yeah.
A duck face though it were.
Right. Although I the point made about him as Hal Jordan, I could see that. See that.
I think so.
Well, I could see some of the frustration, I guess, of being like in that generation of hotshot pilots, where like you did all the groundwork to get those guys into space, but they're you're not one of the people selected to go. And
right.
I could see that like maybe factoring into a little bit of that there, It seems like he has a good relationship with Meg Ryan, but obviously she's had enough of this bullshit and she's got to get out of there. And that whole scene with Dick Miller picking them up, and his sheet getting caught in the car door is just classic.
Hilarious.
Yeah, absolutely classic. The way he kicks that door is crazy too.
What was that thing that the driver said to them that was like, I remember him saying just something out of nowhere that was like, well, you're kind of overstepping your bounds a bit. I can't remember what he said, though.
Yeah, I can't remember his line either. Unfortunately, the Dick Miller bit is just that little like intro scene, and then it's kind of gone. They should have had him in there later, and it might be more memorable. I don't know.
Right.
But basically from there, it turns out they've actually broke up. We reconnect with Tuck, and he's doing his Playboy ways around like this like hot. Well, I don't know if it's like a high, priority project. It looks like a lot of their stuff's kind of jury rigged, but basically these people have been working on this thing, which we saw like a hint to in his apartment, during the opening sequence, where
he had said something about working with rabbits and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And basically it's that they've worked out this way to shrink down a person and like a vessel and put them inside of somebody microscopically so they can travel around inside of like the inner workings of their body. And they're planning on doing this with him and a rabbit, which makes a lot of sense, But unfortunately things go south when these people just burst in there and start spraying motherfuckers with like fire hydrants and take over the entire place, and our dude Ozzy has to take off with Tuck and toe inside of that syringe. But before we get to all that, what do you guys think of like his demeanor when he comes through in there to go into the pod? I love that part for some reason. I don't know why. Like it's just some showboating fighter jock shit, where he's coming through and he like kisses that girl and takes that Polaroid with that other lady.
Right. Yeah, I read somewhere that was like the first selfie in a movie or something like that, which I don't know if that's right, but that's an interesting thought.
Might be true. Might.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like other people had had their photos taken a lot before that in movies, but that there could be something to that. It was, totally unintentional. It was just him being a cocky. I wouldn't even be surprised if that was written like later or improvised on the spot after they saw Dennis Quaid kind of be in that character, because it fits so well, Either that or it's a testament to his acting. But and then he comes in there and they shrink him down and he's in the syringe. What do you guys think about the whole storming of the complex there with the fire hydrants? I really like that for some reason. They could have come in just shooting people, but that would have kind of like put a.
Are you talking about using like the extinguishers to kind of
just pass them out? Yeah,
that was an interesting thought.
That was weird. I don't know. It was just kind of a different thing of how they did.
Yeah,
it gave that scene that same feeling of action as if they were like shooting the people, but nobody was getting killed all over the place. So
actually, you know what I thought of as soon as I like this? That's how they kept their rating.
Probably.
Because that's exactly what I was thinking about. That's exactly, it was like, yes, the rating people were like, no, don't use guns. Extinguishers.
There you go. Yeah.
It's just like it's just like the people who suggest rubber bullets.
Right.
Well, I just took it as like some really ingenious, like corporate espionage type shit. Like we're just gonna come in here and take this microchip. We're not trying to kill anyone, because that's gonna just bring even more heat on all of it.
Right.
Whereas if they do it like that, they might not be forced to call the cops and try to have some other people recover it, type thing.
Yeah. It's like they're trying to be villains, but not super villains, More
like comic book villains.
There you go.
Yeah, we'll just
not even
replace the
necessarily
violence with that red-haired lady sexually harassing people, and that's
exactly
pretty much, what they did with it. So basically, Tuck ends up in the syringe in the possession of Ozzy, and at first, when that dude was taken off on foot, like you'd be forgiven for suspecting it's not going to be a long chase, because he looks like he's never actually ran in his life. But when he jumps that fence and it switches to that stunt double fucking running through the rose bushes, grabbing that bike and like doing some sweet fucking power slides around those cars and stuff, that the movie's really like kicking it in the ass, And essentially on the side of this, we've been introduced to this dude, Martin Short's character.
Yeah.
I forget his name right now.
Jack Putter.
There you go.
Yeah.
And he's like a Safeway clerk with crazy anxiety disorder or something like that. Like
hypochondriac.
Hypochondriac.
Yeah.
That as well. Yep. And he's just having a rough go of it. He's seen his doctor and they're like, we don't really know what to do, man. I mean, I love that part with his doctor too, where he's like, you're pretty much the cornerstone of my whole practice with your repeat visits and everything. But
and then later he has some great lines. Like, of course, after he starts hearing the voices and whatever. But like one of my favorite lines is like, he's talking about theistic hysteria, and Jack's like, how do you treat that? Well, the medieval remedy was to flay the skin off your body with brands of fire. I have no idea what the current technique is.
Dude,
that was kind of fun. That was that doctor is played by William Shallert, who he's been in some stuff over the years. But in the Safeway, you're introduced to two actors. I didn't recognize the one until I saw her name in the credits, but I should have. Wendy is played by Wendy Shaw. And as I said, that little hoe bag, because she is a little hoe bag in this movie.
A little bit.
But it's so appropriate that she's the one that voices Francine in American Dad. It's so appropriate that this is... And then Henry Gibson's a great character actor.
I was just going to mention Shaw, also one of Joe Dante's regulars.
Right. I believe a few of these people. Like I saw that Kevin McCarthy, who plays Scrimshaw, I saw that he was in Piranha, and there might be some others. Yeah. But again, like I said, Henry Gibson's been in tons of stuff over the years. He's a big, and I recognized him, and I couldn't place the name, and I was like, I know that guy. But he was a lot of fun as Putter's boss, basically. It was like, you got the boss and the slutty checkout girl that Putter would love to get with, but
She's just too self-centered, man. I mean, I love that part where they're talking to him after he has his meltdown, and he asks her for that coffee, and she's like, "I got it for myself," basically, and pulls back.
Exactly. Oh, she's like, "It's down the hall."
He says something about her cigarette, and she just puts it out in the coffee, like right away.
Yeah.
Right.
What were you gonna say, Dave?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, for Henry Gibson as Mr. Wormwood. It's definitely a different world than his Blues Brothers role as head Nazi.
Slightly different. Slightly different. But yeah.
Well, basically, as it turns out, they've miniaturized old Tuck Pendleton, and he's inside of this syringe, right? And we, after we've been introduced to everybody, essentially, Martin Short's character is like at this mall as this whole chase with Ozzy is like concluding, which it was a hell of a chase, that bicycle. That's that next to that part later on where he's like swinging on that door above that fucking like muscle car. Or the craziest stunt work in the entire movie. And
he's being chased by Mr. Ego, correct?
Mr. Ego, yes, who's like this, hitman working for the other people.
Which the way his hands are gloved, it reminds me of Mr. Claw from Inspector
Holy
Gadget.
Crap!
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, it's also got a Bond vibe going with it too.
Okay, so Vernon Wells, Mr. Igo, whatever. If you look at his IMDb credits, he's got like something like 30 credits listed as
Fortress, as like a prison rapist, dude.
If you account announced, completed, post-production, filming, pre-production, all that stuff that's not actually out yet, he's got like 30 credits. He must be one hard-working dude.
Yeah. For sure.
Wow.
Didn't have to work too hard in this with that mechanical hand, especially when we saw her with that ginger lady later on.
And he's got that. Actually, it's kind of funny. He has that vanity plate snap-on, which is kind of appropriate.
Yeah, that's good stuff. But basically, this whole chase with Ozzy, which God rest his soul, he did his best to get that shit out of there. Like that's a crazy chase that he went on, and then even while he was taking his dying breaths, he fucking tried to get that dude into a situation where he could save himself.
He just passed away. John Hora, he just passed away this February.
Really hope he was looking at something better than the crazy mall mascots that he was staring up at as he died in this movie. But basically, we end up with our main, hero dude, I guess, and Tuck Pendleton. I don't even know if you'd say that, but that's aside. Tuck ends up injected into the ass of Martin Short's character, who's just a clerk at a Safeway, suffering from this, these maladies. I think that's kind of the point in the movie where it really sets the tone for what's going to happen through the rest of the movie. What do you guys think about this shit up to this point? I guess we'll start with you, Dave, and then we'll just work around.
Well,
anyone has anything to add,
I think that's where the comedy sets in. He definitely didn't expect to get a man injected in his ass, walking around with the darn thing, and he definitely didn't expect the voice coming into his head, especially when he was on his way to his doctor, and when he was in waiting room. That was some classic shit. You're going down there, and he was like, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that?"
The good news, Jack, I think we can rule out demonic possession right off the bat.
I love that
With
part
the little
so
voice
much.
from inside was talking to me. See, that proves that demons talk through you, not to you.
And just to lead up to that, like when he first hears it, he's like, "I'm possessed." It's like classic Martin Short shit, you know.
Yeah.
And then his physical comedy throughout all of it is so great, dude, where he like trips over and like bangs the instrument plate and then like puts his arm through the frame of it, you know, like it's oh man, I love good physical comedy or like slapstick shit like that, I guess, in a way. And this is full of that kind of stuff, really.
Well, Martin Short has definitely got a long history of that physical comedy. That's a big part of the
watching him freak out is kind of like the appeal of Martin Short. Captain Ron, it's one of the in there too.
Well, that's one of the moments I remember in Pure Luck is he's like deathly afraid to be allergic to bee stings, and there's a part where he gets stung by a bee and swells up like a marshmallow, and it's like, I always remember that part. And I was like, ooh.
So, I mean, you know, basically he's got this dude injected into his ass and he's starting to realize something's going on. So he goes to the doctor, as we've alluded to. You know, he eventually kind of realizes that it's real, you know, like there's a dude talking to him inside of his butt. And I don't know, what do you guys think of this whole sequence, though? If you had any points to point out that we maybe haven't touched on through this whole portion of the film there, where he's like, you know, first, because he's unaware that he's been like injected by a dude,
right?
Which helps put a lot of it into context. It's not like the dude told him he was sticking him in the butt with that. Like, you know, he came out of an elevator and like grabbed a hold of him and plunged
it was like
other man into his ass, you know. And that
was a last ditch moment scene, and I have to admit that whole chase scene was intense.
It really was. And then, I mean, just, you know, the fact that this dude's already dealing with like these problems, you know, and then it turns out this dude's injected into his ass in this high tech, you know, like craft type thing. Like one of my favorite bits of all that's where he talked about this dream he had where he was ringing up all these items at work at Safeway, which
like a premonition or something like that.
It was a premonition,
but it happens because he's trying to signal the people with the EMP pulse or whatever, so it's like messing up his cash register. That whole bit is just hilarious to me. He's like freaking out on the people asking for the aspirin.
And then her reaction was so mild. Like most people would be furious if you're overcharging them by that much. But she seems to get out a gun, which seems like but then you eventually find out it was actually a lighter or something like that.
Could people? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was different where I don't think people were just smoking in line at the supermarket back then.
Well,
I don't know.
I do know
not now, but
when I was growing up in that time period, I remember a couple of things. I do remember a lot of smoking. I remember cigarettes being sold with those you pull the lever and the cigarettes would
vending machines.
I know Roger remembers those too. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Vending machines. I remember those.
They still have them in Vegas.
But yeah, smoking was a lot more accepted almost everywhere in the 80s.
Absolutely.
In fact, you could go to still go to the local mall when I was a kid, and still be surrounded by cigarette smoke. Because I remember going to Southbridge Mall here in Milwaukee and being able to go around to the different stores for Halloween candy. And I remember smelling cigarette smoke like constantly while I was there.
They probably had smoking areas, dude. I mean, I don't know. I feel like
you could actually smoke in public, and there was no such thing as a smoking area.
Right, but most people also had common sense and general fucking courtesy back then. So
nope.
I don't know about that.
Nope.
I think more often than not, you would not find people lighting up in the grocery store line.
No, this was all something that was politicalized in the public to get things because people got sensitive. It was only in the 90s that this happened.
Oh, it was 90s when a lot of the non-smoking stuff came in, which is good in a way because
it's all good in every way
sorry,
because even as a smoker, I shouldn't be able to like fucking affect your guys' health with secondhand smoke and like a bunch of bullshit.
I'm gonna tell you, unless an area had good ventilation, going to a restaurant like that back then, I am glad that I don't have to go into the restaurant and have a cloud of smoke hanging.
It's gnarly, dude. I mean, I remember like being a kid and my parents getting seats in the smoker section and stuff because it's surprising how long that idea that it really wasn't a big deal lasted, because it is, I do but I don't condone it.
I think they're too hard on it currently, but I do think that it was. I think having a smoker section in the bars and so on is fine, and it was a good idea. But having it to where it was just like everybody, boy, being a non-smoker back in those times was the more torturous experience.
Well, but basically, she lights up a cigarette in the line, and he realizes he's not going to get shot and killed, so he's back there still having like a nervous breakdown because he's hearing these voices inside of his head.
Yeah,
and his coworkers or his coworker and his manager are trying to talk to him, like they think he's fucking nuts, as you probably would. So he ends up back at that doctor's office. That's where we get the whole "I'm possessed" and all that shit. Eventually, he's able to convince him that he's a real thing inside of his head. I think after he blows up his TV, which is one of my favorite moments of the movie too. Because again, we get like dope fire extinguisher action. Just launches that tape through his window.
I love that lighter though that she picks up. I like that.
It is pretty cool. I've had similar ones.
Identical to the dream. I mean, he must be clairvoyant to be able to.
He must be
to the T.
So I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think about the whole idea of realizing that there's somebody injected inside of you? Do you think you'd take to it pretty quick?
It'd be a strange thing.
I don't think we have much of a choice at this point.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to live with it until you're gonna have to get rid of it.
Yeah, I think I can understand him thinking at first that it was like in his head, but then once the TV blows up because of something that it did, then it makes sense that he'd buy it after that point,
Right.
What were you gonna say, Roger?
No, it simply said that I would have to. We're going to have to live with it. You can't just get rid of it. You're going to have to live with it until you can find out a way to get rid of it. So I'd be more complacent.
Yeah, I mean, even if it is in your head, you got to sort that out too. So, so basically, we learn that he's got one of these chips that's required for him to be brought back to regular size, and these people that stormed this place trying to steal him and this other chip, like, have the other chip.
Control the whole technology so it can take over the world.
Right. So basically, him and Martin Short's character have to band together to try and, like, figure out a way to get this friggin' chip back from these people so that they can, get him out of him and bring him back to normal size. There's a point where he ends up back at the laboratory where they did all this shit to them. And he kind of overhears them talking about, like, they can't really save the other dude, but at least they have one of the chips, and so that's where they kind of really figure out that they've got to set out and do this shit on their own, or else, at least one of them's going to have a super tragic outcome to this whole thing. What were you going to say, Dave?
I was going to say, for some reason, I enjoy the moment where I guess he wants a drink while he's inside of him, and
yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the best scenes of the whole movie is where they get drunk together.
Is that the I saw this line. I don't remember it in the movie, but I saw this line on IMDb, and I was highly amused by it, where Pendleton apparently says, "We're going to drink this one to Ozzy, a good man who tried to save my ass by injecting me into yours."
Yep. If I had to choose favorite line in the entire movie, dude, because it's just so heartfelt,
It's good times.
Don't you love that ritual that he has to sober himself up? Like, slap yourself, no harder.
And then he said, how does that feel? And he's like, one more time.
Yeah. The Pendleton machine, no defects. But yeah, they're kind of working together at that point. That whole drunk scene is really cool too, because they kind of bond a little bit over each other's shared situation there, especially like the part where, he wants to see him in the mirror because he doesn't even know what he looks like. And along the way, he like sees a picture of him or whatever. And they're just having like a good drunk bro moment, while also like actually seeing each other for the first time.
Bro force.
And I think that was handled really well, like the way that they did it,
Dude bro party the fourth. No.
But basically, the only way these guys are going to figure all this shit out, most likely, is by hooking up with Meg Ryan again, who is like, Tuck's girlfriend, reporter extraordinaire, and a lady that knows her way around town to help them out with this kind of stuff. And it turns out she's already kind of investigating like this whole happenings at this, research facility or whatever. So it doesn't take much to mend the two storylines together into one thing where they, she's going along with Martin Short's character, kind of believing, I think, that Tuck is being held somewhere unless they get these two chips back together. And they kind of set off to go about doing that. Turns out that she knows about this guy, the cowboy, who's played amazingly, Robert Picardo, the doctor from Star Trek Voyager.
Yep.
Absolutely love that shit. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts about them like hooking up and going into this together here?
Cowboy.
The cowboy is an interesting character. And then, as y'all can tell from my image, we have an interesting thing where somehow Tuck gets the idea that by stimulating the muscles or something.
He says some shit like that doesn't make sense, and
it doesn't really, but somehow he manages.
Shark, you know what I mean?
Somehow they figure out shape-shifting, and they're able to turn Putter into the cowboy, but with the same weird, freaky hair that he had already. And they even ask him about it. The doctor, what's her name, asks him about it, Dr. Kanker. And I can't remember his response, but it was actually kind of amusing. But whatever the case, that was when it broke down, when obviously Putter's concentration was broken, and it was an interesting, weird scene.
I also really liked the... what was it? The scene where... I like the introduction of the main villain. God, I can't think of his name, the actor, but I always remember him as the main villain in UHF.
Are you talking about Victor Scrimshaw?
Yeah.
Or the actor would be Kevin McCarthy.
I just loved it. I just loved the character just like that. sleazy guy with the cigars, and like I say, UHS was the one that I always think of him as, because that's one of my favorite roles that he did.
He's pretty great.
He did have
pretty slimy, you know.
He did have kind of a nice. Actually, him and Kanker, they had kind of a fun moment where this is after they've gotten hold of Putter and they're going to inject Igo, whatever it was supposed to be, into him. And they've got this little exchange with Scrimshaw's like, or Kanker's like, Mr. Igo will pilot the pod out of a tear duct or a sweat gland. But why chance that? Once he's got control of the pod and takes the chip, let's re-enlarge.
Yeah, let's just blow him up.
While it's still inside Mr. Putter? Well, why not? Have you any idea the kind of mess that would make?
It would have looked cool, though. Let's just put it that way. We're jumping ahead slightly.
Yeah,
there,
a little bit,
but it's basically they've decided to set out and hook up with this girlfriend to figure out this shit with the cowboy. Because this dude is somebody who specializes in selling stolen tech. And he's a character in and of himself. You know, the cowboy is pretty great. Robert Picardo just absolutely having a blast. You could tell. Being a dork in that character, you know. But basically, you know, along the way to this, we're kind of getting a little bit of a love triangle formed between Martin Short's character, Meg Ryan, and Tuck.
Dennis Quaid.
Yeah. What do you guys think about the way that forms itself? You think that's? I feel like it works out somewhat organically. At the same time, it's rushed a bit for the sake of the run time. But I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Cobbled together.
Yeah, I would have to say so because it wasn't necessarily entirely needed per se. Although I guess as far as the kissing goes, I guess that was a way for him to travel into her body and whatnot. But
but again, maybe not entirely needed.
About that. This was one of the biggest leaps of logic of the movie. But it kind of amused me because it was kind of like that whole thing that a lot of really super conservative people do that's really stupid, of the whole you kiss, you get pregnant sort of thing. It's like literally he does end up in her womb somehow after they kiss. I don't know the logic or physics of that.
They had
I really don't.
2 months before at the beginning of the movie, dude.
I guess you could say Quaid was riding on pheromones.
I guess, but that was a big leap of
makes
logic.
sense based on the logic established by the rest of his travel.
It is odd how he managed up right there from
that
the kiss.
is
right,
and then went from the womb.
That's what I was going to get at.
And then also at another point where he ended up going almost straight from the stomach to the lungs. That was another part where I was like, I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, they kind of magic school busted a bit. It's a good time. It's just, it requires some suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
I wonder if Bruce Willis and Dennis Quaid ever shared womb stories together.
Damn, dude.
Who knows?
Sorry. But
anyway, basically, since we've touched on it, we'll cover that a little bit. Tuck at some point gets transferred between the two because while this whole love triangle is blossomed, I personally think it makes sense. It would have made sense on screen more if this was like a series rather than a movie. Like if it was played out longer, it would make sense that she'd kind of fall for him, but were given an hour and 40 minutes or whatever, so they did what they had with what they had. But basically she kisses him at some point during all this while they're going in here trying to like make his face like the other dude so that they can steal the microchip.
Right.
I mean, that's the biggest leap of logic in the whole thing. That's where the movie becomes kind of hokey.
I did find it funny
As
when
fun as
they're
it is,
trying to make the deal and the face thing is starting to wear off. He's freaking the crap out of everybody.
Don't get me wrong. That's what I'm getting at. I love all that stuff, like the results of this wacky scenario. But that's where the movie, to me, up to that point, even with like the kissing or the baby or things like that, like I could buy some of that and just being like, I got to suspend my disbelief a little bit to buy that, but. Okay, he's inside their body or whatever. Like, that's the thing. The face changing is still too much for me. That's where Interspace loses a little credibility, where it's like, damn, come on.
Or at least that they were able to do it so well with so little practice, it was like, that's kind of crazy,
It was interesting, I guess, the face changing thing. Although it kind of reminded me of some similar effects in Drop Dead Fred or something like that.
Had I written the movie, I probably would have done it to where they masqueraded as like the help to get Dennis Quaid into like his food or his drink somehow, so that he could go into his brain and like hold him hostage to give them the shit. Like that's how I would have done it. And it still could have made for some fun comedy with Martin Short and what's her ass without arguably one of the craziest scenes in the movie where like they finally, they're gonna put the blowtorch to him or whatever, and his whole face just freaks out and he's like shaking his head around and shit. That's one of the funner scenes of the movie, I think. But doesn't make a ton of sense because we already know that you couldn't just make someone's face look different like that.
Well, because some things you're gonna have to suspend your belief on, just to advance the movie forward.
For sure.
There was something, and this is back when Wizard magazine was running. If y'all are familiar with Wizard, that was a comic book magazine. And the letter section was one of the most hilarious sections to read. I loved it because the responses were very tongue-in-cheek. And somebody was complaining that Spider-Man loses all reality for them because Spider-Man's glove did not stick to the webbing when he would shoot it. So therefore, a Spider-Man made no sense. And they had written this like, so you're talking about Spider-Man, a man who gained his power from a radioactive spider, whose aunt has like 40 heart attacks a week.
No, it's more like 5.
And you're like saying that it's the glove that's
the hang up.
Well, yeah.
I see where you're going with that, but you could argue that that's a less of a leap of logic than expecting that this dude who's already been traveling pretty fantastically with no regard for actual human anatomy, as a couple of you guys have already pointed out, through people's bodies through the entire movie, can all of a sudden like make someone's face look like another person. Like that's a bit more of a leap, The Spider-Man glove thing is like stepping over a crack not to break your mama's back. The fucking the other one's like jumping over a fucking culvert or something.
I can't remember if it was this book. There was a really good book I read called The Physics of Superheroes. And I can't remember the author's name. It starts with a K, but that was a fascinating book. And they actually posited that one of the more realistic ones was Kitty Pryde's power. One of the least realistic ones, according to this author, was Shrinking. They would have said that this movie was pretty much bullshit in terms of the physics of it. But it's interesting. I think it was that book that gave me the concept of what they called the miracle exception. It's like any project that you're going into, anything you're watching, there's one specific leap of faith you're going to have to make to get the story, if that makes sense. And most of the time it's pretty benign. It's like a small thing. But like with Spider-Man, it might be believing that someone could gain their powers from a spider. And that might be your miracle exception. And as long as everything more or less follows the rules set forward by that, you're gold. You're good to go. Mm-hmm. And it could be that this person was just really too hung up on the details. They just didn't want to nitpick or whatever. Because, yeah, really, I have to admit, being able to grip the webbing or getting stuck to the webbing might be kind of getting lost in the weeds of the details, if you will.
You know,
that's kind of
pretty good example. That would be the Force. You know how they try now. Later on, how they try to explain is that's not really spiritual. It's like biological. You got these midichlorians and So, well, I think it's a lot better if they simply didn't explain it. Now, since you explained it, now people can say, well, it's not as powerful as you think it could be or as you imagine to be. Sometimes it kind of happens that way with superhero stuff. You just have to let it go. That Wolverine has aluminium claws because he was dumped in a vat of aluminium. So then he lived.
I admit, like with this one, for me, it kind of is. Like, I get Mo's point about the facial reconstruction. That's
just too much.
And that's kind of like hard. Like, it's a leap of logic that's too much. Yeah.
I mean, on the one hand, I kind of agree with that idea that true shrinking in the way that it's shown here is physiologically impossible. And this guy did a really good job of explaining why. So it's like, if you can believe that, you can believe a lot, and you're less likely to nitpick. But there are things that just jump out at you. And yes, being able, without any practice or any idea what the hell you're doing, to be able to modify someone else's face through electrical stimulation to the point they could become someone else.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
That's kind of crazy. The idea that two people can kiss and the next place I'm in the womb. No, you're going to find out where you are when you're in like the esophagus or something. I mean, it just
that just put us like maybe they skipped some of the travel time, you know. But the face thing is too much, and it leads to really. I mean, both scenes are really fun, you know. They're fun, like 80s movie scenes, but they make no sense based on the rest of the movie.
It's a movie that you can't look at. Like, even if you make the miracle exception, you're still going to be looking at it with a grain of salt. Like, I think anyone...
to that point, though, you're sucking on a fucking salt lick like a horse or something if you're buying that it's like... You know, we've gone beyond the grain of salt there. It's like, all right, this is wacky now, and that's fine. But basically, he goes in there like impersonating this cowboy dude that sells this tech, and he's trying to get it off these people. It fails pretty miserably because not only did she use like a gum wrapper to get on the silver tooth, but he just can't hack it like trying to be someone else.
He did all right at first.
Like, they knew something was up right away, man. They're like, this guy's being weird. And so, you know, they were going to have that Bond villain dude, like, put his wrist torch to him or whatever.
Right.
And that's when, thankfully, you know, everything kind of breaks down and his face goes wild. And that's one of the craziest, like, a lot of effects went into achieving that in this scene. Like, a lot of different appliances, and it's insane when you watch them like melting down from that. I still love it every time that I watch it. Hey, they dropped the chip into the dog food, and those people are like going and trying to retrieve it and everything. And basically, they end up captured again. What do you guys have any thoughts on that whole lunch or brunch sequence? I guess we'll call it the brunch. Do you guys have any thoughts on that, where he is trying to be the cowboy and then flip, everything melts down?
Be the cowboy.
At first, I thought he was trying to pull it off, and I thought he was doing an okay job. It's when he dropped the cigar. Is when he fucked up,
It all goes downhill from there.
It's like when you drop the soap in jail. So, in any case,
never drop the Cuban. Never drop the Cuban. Yeah.
But in any case, I don't know. I kind of get a kick out of Robert's.
He would have done well. He would have done well if he followed my rule. I have never smoked a cigar. I've never smoked a cigarette. I'm fairly proud of this. But I have said for many years, if someone handed me a Cuban, I would smoke it. Just because.
They're pretty nice. My problem with it is, I don't know, man. Again, it's just that leap of logic. Like, it feels like it goes from being like a somewhat consistent 80s comedy to being like an earnest movie.
Hey, Ernest would have nailed the disguise segment of it. He
for sure
nailed that.
But you guys get what I'm saying. Like, it has a bit of that wacky vibe to it after that point, and that's fine. I dig it, but basically that shit all melts down. They end up captive once again, or down there in the basement, and that's where they have their kissing scene. Now, I guess
that was a pretty nice basement, though.
It was, but if you notice, when he bonks his head, they probably could have escaped from there.
Right.
They definitely kind of forced the love triangle thing.
Yeah,
I've been pondering this a bit throughout this discussion, and for sure, it's forced in there.
Yeah, have to give Meg Ryan a reason to be there.
And unfortunately, even though she's been whacking dudes on the head, well, I think that comes after this point, but she's pretty useful. She rescues him from that fucking freezer truck that he's in at that one point. And that's where we first get introduced to that creepy fur coat dude that you guys were talking about earlier. Kevin McCarthy is Victor Scrimshaw. But I don't know, man. Like, the whole kiss scene, and even him getting transferred because of the kiss, I can buy, because it makes sense of how small he was. But why would he be up there waiting? Like, he was telling him not to do that shit from the beginning, where he was catching him looking at her legs and stuff, which I thought was really funny. They kind of ruin it with that stuff, because it's like, how is he going to know to be up in his lips?
Right. Well, again, the physics of it, it could be that he might have been hanging out in his shoulder or something, and it's a kiss. Well, that's going to obviously transfer.
Yeah, somehow I'm transferred from saliva.
Right.
It feels, as much as I love the movie, like they had a solid concept for how it works until a certain point in the script. And then they were just like, whatever.
Just make it happen. Just do it.
Right.
Just do it. I don't care.
So
it's for kids anyways.
So basically, they end up kissing, and he's transferred into her body, where he sees the whole womb scene that we alluded to.
Yeah. And
basically stuck in there. This is one point in the movie, though, that I think is really cool, because they're captive again, right? Like, they're planning on injecting Mr. Ido, or whatever his name was.
Right.
Ego.
Okay.
Ego.
Yeah, Mr. Ego into his bloodstream, and arguably a much more badass setup than they had for Dennis Quaid.
Well, his was built a little bit more for exploration. This guy's is built for
Combat.
a combat. Indeed.
Yeah. In 2 portions, I especially like how he could eject out of it and be around in there. That was really cool.
Yeah.
But basically,
Didn't help him much in the end, but
we'll touch on that. But
right.
basically, Mr. Igo's been injected inside of him, and unbeknownst to him, Dennis Quaid has been transferred into Meg Ryan.
Right.
So my favorite parts of the movie where he's like, oh, I'm going to do this and Tuck will like help me through it or whatever. And he's just like actually kicking ass on his own. I thought that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
There was another movie that was like that called Real Men, where you've got the guy who, basically you got the kind of pathetic guy, and he realizes that he has his own strength through the actions, first relying on the one guy, the more confident person, and then eventually being his own man.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I thought that was a really cool way to portray that in this, where he just was kind of so used to it, doing it at this point that he thought Tuck was with him, and then he kind of realized, like, oh shit, when that guy's coming up the stairs at him, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Killer, sir, and then he still just like drop kicks him in the fucking face, and like they still get away, So it was cool to see Martin Short's character like gain some confidence through the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
And I especially like the running use of that song. It's listed right here as Sam Cooke's Cupid in the Wikipedia page, but I'd heard it other places before, I feel like in like another movie or two. And it really is like kind of a classic jam, And the way it was used in the movie, where once Tuck was like, injected into her through that kiss, and he was trying to signal to her that, I don't know that that's how that works. If you played a song in like my gut, am I going to hear it in my ears? Probably not. It's probably going to sound like some type of spasm or ulcer. It's not going to be a good time. But science aside, she hears it and knows that it's him because it's their song or whatever. So eventually it dawns on her somehow that they have to kiss again to transfer him back so that he can fight off our bad guy that's been injected. What do you guys think about this whole battle here with Tuck and Mr. Ego?
Well, it's like two small subs fighting.
Right.
There you go.
The one will try to drown the other.
Right.
Yes, they're trying to ram or grab or pull or make a hole.
Yeah, it almost seems like he's kind of in like a Mr. Freeze kind of a suit, and he kind of can actually in that suit like be a sub at the same time.
Right. Go ahead, Dave.
And we definitely get a kind of a fight scene.
Yeah, it's kind of strange though. Like,
the bad guy.
Of course, but yeah, he eats the bad guy basically. But it's interesting.
He's a cannibal for sure.
I know. Yeah. And of course,
I definitely wanted to bring up, like, where do you guys stand on that, cannibal or no?
Hey,
well, at that size, it was kind of like eating an insect, so it's a little different.
I really like the character.
I don't think it's true cannibalism, because it's just they took the subs in the body. I don't think they're really trying to eat them. Just for nutrition.
He did. It went in through his throat. It went through all the same process that a normal piece of meat you would eat would go through.
That's one way to look at it, but it is interesting though that Ego is so completely and easily destroyed by the acid, and yet this machine that Tuck is in he actually encourages it. He basically tries to force sort of like an acid reflux sort of reaction to get out of there. And he's like, I'm like, okay, well, why is the acid not bothering them?
No, I'm sure it was, but I mean, he's got
Yeah.
a lot more shit between him and the
Right.
acid than this dude did with his wetsuit and like his.
Yeah, a
shoulder
little
gear,
bit
you know?
more. But
So
then
it makes
the
sense he'd be dissolved first,
Yeah.
but yeah, you definitely wouldn't want to be in there for too long. And
no.
to their credit, he's not, you know.
And then, of course, he ends up from there in the lungs somehow very quickly, and that was again.
Yes.
I wonder, and not just because of the physics of it, but
Well, he's
just
punching
the
through, like
For the time.
punching holes.
Because that's
well,
the
like
thing
if you think about like how the ship was probably coated with acid. That probably didn't feel so good
No.
for those lungs.
Well, and dude, like Brandon just pointed out, there's several points in the movie too where he
Right.
just slices a big old gap in a fucking
Right.
proper
Right.
vein.
Yeah.
Going to the heart and stuff. Like I imagine Martin Short
Right.
would have been dead about halfway through this.
I wondered about that too. Now that you mention that, I meant yes, there probably was some internal hemorrhaging.
Yeah, you need to drop dead. Like part of the way
Yeah.
through this bitch.
No, I will miss the guy with the hand. I mean, shoot. I mean, just alone for that whole scene where he's with the
Right.
female villain and he uses that one
Yes.
particular attachment.
Yes. That's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, dude. Because that lady's trying for some, like, from the moment that you meet her. And then when you see her with that dude, and he takes off that other hand, and then he puts on that other one, and all you need is the sound effect to know what's about to go down.
Oh man, I'm afraid I
Amazing.
probably missed that part because I don't remember that.
Oh,
Oh, it
dude.
was so hilarious.
Okay, that sounds fun.
So basically, as we've touched on, bad guy gets boiled in stomach acid.
Yeah.
They're able to. I love that scene where he comes running in and he's like, hairspray, and they give him the moose and he squeezes it. Like, just some more good Martin Short, like physical comedy, freak out shit. They eventually bring him back to life, and that whole scene where he's like so stoked to see both of them is one of my favorites in the entire movie. Like,
oh yeah.
Dennis Quaid was into it, even if these other guys weren't.
You gotta remember though, you gotta back up a bit. You gotta talk about shrinking the other characters, the big bad and the woman.
Oh, true enough. Yeah, we did skip over Meg Ryan coming in there after she brained that dude and took his gun and rescuing Martin Short's character off the table there.
And then kind of half shrinking Scrimshaw and Kanker.
So that both of them could fit into the cowboy suitcase.
Yeah.
That whole part of the movie is fun, but it is also one of those things where it's like, oh man.
Waste of time a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's just a little too wacky considering the tone of the rest of the stuff. I don't know. It feels like something that was like added and not something that
they kind of no-mobiled it in the back there, didn't they? I don't know if any of you have seen the Disney movie The No-Mobile.
I haven't, but I did see Martin Short's elastic face getting pulled by like some fake gnome hands in this movie, and it was funny, but I don't know if we needed it.
No, I don't think so either.
I think that part of it is kind of right there with the other stuff where it's like too much of a leap of logic. It feels like it was added in to like make it feel more wacky and 80s, and it's like the movie was fine without it, like them with the giant phone and stuff. It's just I don't know. That's the only part of the movie where I'm just like, okay, this can wrap up now. But basically, the day is saved and he's like playing the third wheel at their wedding. You know,
Well,
he's still shooting down that girl from the Safeway because she only wants him because she thinks he's interesting.
Well, he did finally shoot her down. Yeah, that was kind of that was a great Martin Sheen moment, actually. Like, not Martin Sheen, Martin Short, sorry.
It was,
great Martin Short moment at the end there where he's like, Wendy, no way. Mr. What's his face? I quit.
I'm cured.
Yeah.
He's like, that's the cowboy. I'm taking off. And he jumps in that car and just burns rubber out, almost hits several fucking people that are attending the wedding.
Again, if one movie I would recommend people see if they liked this would be Real Men, which had God, what is it James Belushi? I think that's the living one, right?
Yeah.
James Belushi, because Joan Belushi died.
Yeah, and I can't think of the other guy's name, but it is very similar to this in a lot of ways. With the you've got the experienced kind of like agent guiding this guy who doesn't know anything, and then by the end of it, the other guy is just like back into it. So it's kind of like this comedy. I think you would like that one.
I can see that, man. There's a little there was like a trend of that with 80s and 90s movies, like where it would be like the dude taught me a bunch, but then at the end I told him so, kind of a thing.
I mean, it's not a bad thing though, because I mean I really enjoyed both this and the other movies. But it's just I like the I mean thought of like if you like this would be pretty cool too.
For sure. I'll definitely be checking it out. But yeah, we basically get, Martin Short being the one to realize that something's still up at the end, and he heads off to, hopefully have his chance to save the day. And we get that really long helicopter shot, which I still think is fucking rad if you really watch it from start to finish. All the way out to the coast, basically. So I don't know, man. I guess what would be your guys' favorite moments of like this climactic, sequence of the shit?
My favorite moment would probably be when he's in the bathroom talking to his penis.
I don't know if that's from the climax, but we definitely did skim over that. That is one of the best moments in the entire movie.
Yeah,
you're not going to be small forever.
I wanna say that Austin Powers stole that from this movie.
Yeah.
Who does number 2 work for?
Right.
That's a classic.
Sounds like it.
Now, what about you, Jake?
Favorite moments?
Well, I mean, it really is kind of one of those movies, so I guess we could do that. Then we'll jump into how you guys feel about effects and scenes. And stuff.
Okay. I'm sorry. I admit I'm a little having trouble following right at the moment. So overall effects and whatever were pretty decent. I mean, I'm not sure I would have said necessarily Oscar level, but certainly pretty interesting. And the use of music overall was quite excellent too. You mentioned the one song, but you also have the what's that one really Twisting the Night Away was one of them. I guess that was the one I was thinking of that was heavily used. Couple of Sam Cooke songs mixed in there, isn't that something?
What was it up against?
Overall, the production was pretty impressive. Overall,
I can see where this could deserve an Oscar in terms of if, again, you were magic school busing your logic on the human body, and we're just like, all right, it looks really cool that he's going in and out of these like blood streams, and there was some impressive effects in the movie, for sure. The way he was.
I don't know what it was up against. That would be the question.
That is a good question.
Yeah, that would
1987.
actually illustrate it a lot better because
Let's have a
But
look. I'll
on
do
its
that.
own,
with
it
Edie.
is some pretty spectacular special effects when you think about all that stuff.
Because at the time, that was actually pretty darn good. I mean, that really
Yeah.
was the Fantastic Voyage for the 80s, which and it did a very good job of doing that mimicry.
When you first see him cut into like that vein and he goes inside of it and there's like all that blood pumping through it, you know, that shit was pretty amazing.
Oh wow, there were only 2 nominees that year for visual effects.
Wow.
I don't know. There were only 2. It was up against Predator. So
This one's better than Predator, but that's not.
I'd have probably. Well, overall, Innerspace probably takes it because they did more.
Yeah.
You know, Predator had some really cool designs, but yeah, Interspace deserves that one. That's it. I love Predator, so every part of me wants to be like, "Fuck that Predator," but they didn't have enough visual or special effects to take it above Interspace.
87. I mean, hell, The Princess Bride had almost as good special effects.
Again,
they had there were
like,
a couple like Empire of the Sun I could have seen being RoboCop.
All right,
RoboCop was an Oscar nominee, but not for visual effects. Strangely enough,
weird.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. Especially because there were only 2 nominees. You'd think RoboCop would have been the third.
I don't know, dude. If I had to go with like, well, okay, let's go to Septemson first. What's your favorite scene?
Scene? I had a number of them. I just enjoyed it in general. I would say, as far as things go, I like the whole fight between him and the rival guy that they send, Mr. Claw. But of course, I also like the scene where he uses his special attachment to please his lady friend.
Dude, if we're being real and you like lose a limb like that, if you don't get a special attachment, you're just fucking up. Yeah. Come on.
I mean, you gotta make yourself that Bond villain. You gotta just work at it.
Yeah. You should have a whole quiver of things that you're willing to whip out and attach to that stump. That's what I'm saying. Swiss Army man, that shit.
Well, I mean, especially if you're trying to be a Bond villain, because if Bond were ever to lose a limb, he'd be the first to do that sort of thing.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I mean, there was a guy with one in a Bruce Lee movie that was kind of mimicking a Bond, which we covered, I believe.
We did.
You never really get follow-ups on those Bond girls, too. It's possible. Some of them found such a man.
The $6 million man, to be fair.
All in the right places, man. He invested the money well.
How do you think Goldfinger actually did what he did?
So, Roger, let's go to you. You got a favorite moment in the movie?
Actually, my favorite moment would be the blood work. I kind of liked how the cells looked kind of really nice, and you had this sense of space, and floating and alone, and it's something that was kind of completely alien. I kind of like that part of it, because it kind of suspended my disbelief for that period of time.
For sure. It's one of those effects where, like, you look at it and you almost don't want to know how they did it because it looks so scary,
It looks pretty good. I was really impressed with it.
Yeah, when he's first diving in there, I'm always like, oh, that looks fucking terrifying, like all those blood cells flying by. And if I just knew it was like, I don't know, whatever they did it with, it would probably be bone. So I've never really looked into it because I just want to think it's blood cells. It's got a couple of those things, like when he's going into the heart of the stomach. Like, I don't care if that's anatomically correct. It looks rad, It serves the purpose for the movie.
Well, all that rolling acid in the stomach was kind of impressive. That was kind of
Yeah.
yeah.
And that skeleton one melted all that shit off was pretty dope too. I still say he's an accidental cannibal, but you guys are free to disagree. And so basically, yeah, we end up with old Martin Short getting cucked out at his wedding and fucking coming after him in that fucking, that badass muscle car, leaving it open for some cool sequels. I guess now is a good point to just sort of wrap up here. I mean, you guys have anything else you want to add to the discussion here on Interspace? We could talk about characters, I suppose. You got a favorite character? There's really only like 3.
Oh.
So
they're not a lot.
No, I don't have a favorite character. It was kind of a show that you just simply watch the show, and then if you like the show, you like the show, because it wasn't about the characters. It was simply about showing off the technology.
If I had a favorite, I'd have to pick Jack. He was pretty fun.
I like the villains.
The villains were fun. I like how that one dude, even though he didn't have he was on the road, he had that one corner of that empty warehouse set up as like his Bond lair. Did you catch that? Where he's got like that pink corner all lit up with the luxury furniture and his dog, but then they zoom out and it's like just an empty warehouse outside of that.
Forrest, if you could pick a favorite, what would you pick? Are you around?
I would say when actually I was about to say the one that you though I was going to say the one that you were about to say earlier, where he's in the restroom taking a piss, and the guy he's talking to Quaid and tells him, go ahead and play with it, but don't talk to it.
Yeah, because he's having a good conversation with it, man, and it's all that type of shit that's like out of context. It sounds like he's talking to his dick. It's okay to be small. You're not going to be small forever. It's just a classic movie, man. I mean, Innerspace is one of those flicks that, touches into that fucking sort of sci-fi thing that was going on in the 80s. But a lot of us love it because it also has like that goofy, irreverent sort of comedy that was happening at the time. A little bit of that rom-com influence in there too. I like to think this is one of those ones that's responsible for those of us that would later go on and watch like Sleepless in Seattle and think it's a pretty good movie. I still like a good rom-com, set up right. So yeah, I don't know. I always love Innerspace. I'm glad that you guys went on this journey with me.
Okay.
Alrighty. Are we ready for our outros?
Would you guys recommend Interspace to other people to check out?
I think if you like 80s comedy, that's good.
I think it's worth a rental. Sometimes you have to change. You have to try something new.
Again, if you're willing to just go along for the ride and not pick apart the minutiae, it's a fun movie. It is hard for me as someone who does think about the science of it to take it fully on its terms, but it's definitely still fun.
Darn, Bill and Ted's gonna bother you.
I'll get there eventually.
What about you, Forrest?
Favorite
you recommend an Innerspace anytime soon?
Oh, absolutely. It's a fun movie. Definitely I would say good like weekend afternoon watch.
Oh yeah, dude. Score some Papa Murphy's or something. Fire it up with your friends. You're doing good. You already got the night sorted. You're probably going to watch something better afterwards. And the fact that it's like Joe Dante, maybe it'll be The Howling,
Oh, absolutely.
or Gremlins, something just, the same kind of shit, but better.
Right.
Never heard of him. No, just kidding.
That being said, man, I mean, I don't know. I think we've pretty much covered it. I don't know the Interspace. It does have that Jerry Goldsmith score. So, we could argue the music is good, but is it memorable? I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, the use of the Sam Cooke songs was pretty memorable.
That's the part that I take away. I don't know
Yeah.
if any part of the score has ever been anything that I was like, yeah, I really want to hear that again. No? I mean,
Nope.
Nope.
Yeah,
Nope.
I'm good.
really, the standout part of this is effects and fun people that we know from other shit playing fun people, and I think it succeeds in both those departments, while some of it might not be the most logical. I mean, come on. If you're going right from the mouth to the womb, this is a hard thing to swallow. Or apparently easy, based on
I was going to say, apparently it's so easy to swallow that it goes a
But
little
actual
far.
science aside, which I firmly believe should never be applied to movies unless it expressly calls for it, I think this was a good time. So, I'm glad that we got a chance to go through them together.
Here too. I'm glad as well.
I suppose my closing argument will be, if you had to choose one of us to be inserted into,
Oh no, man.
which one of us would you choose?
I would choose myself.
You can't be inserted into yourself, man. That's not how it
I
works.
can have temporal reality shifts and stuff like that.
Hey, suspend disbelief, right?
Leap of faith. The penitent man will pass.
Another Jeffrey Bohm screenplay. There you go.
I think I'd go into Forrest because he doesn't. He seems like he drinks less than most of us, and also probably eats better. So maybe I'd have an easier time navigating it. Shh, I want to go into you. Okay, I want to be in your body. So, what about you, Dave? Who are you going into? You got to choose. Dude, old Martin Short didn't have a choice. It just went right in his ass. That's how it was.
Mo, I want to go into your ass.
You do realize that I'd be drunk most of the time, though. Like, if you get injected into my ass, it's just going to be that scene where they're at his apartment, and then you're going to die in there.
I'm sorry, but sometimes this podcast has to go there.
You're going to die in there, bro, because it's just going to be that montage of us drunk at the apartment, and then we'll be like, holy shit, 9 minutes. I'm sorry, dude.
It could be like that moment in Flesh Gordon Meets the Cosmic Cheerleaders.
Oh.
Hey, you never know.
Okay, so if we're talking montages, if I would choose the montage from Herod's Law.
Yeah, I'm sure you would.
Anyways,
so what about you, Jake?
Means...
What are you going into? Well, let's finish this out here. Everyone's got to choose.
Who, me?
Yeah.
I just said one of those girls from Herod's Law.
We had a select cast to choose from. So. I'm sorry, but you got to go into one of us.
Time of day.
What about you, Brandon? You getting injected into?
I obviously wouldn't make it out of alive when it would meet any of you. So I probably I would say you, Mo, because at least then I could use that flask trick and stuff like that. So at least I could be high or like out of it, like for the end of it.
I might try. I might try. I don't know. I think if it was any of you guys, I might be like, all right. You know. What about you, Forrest? Who are you going into?
Who am I going to? Probably. I guess you. Since you're going to me, I'm going to you.
There we go. Synergy, bro. we'll penetrate each other and create one infinite being. That's
There we go.
Roger's just over there like, what the fuck is
Okay, I
happening?
think this conversation has officially jumped the chart.
I think so. Were I to
Socially
choose a
weird.
second,
You know,
it
for
would be
kids.
Roger because Roger seems more responsible than most of us. So
Oh my god.
he might be the cleanest living. Like I could just live in there and enjoy the grid array, and it'd be a good time.
Hey, I'm a respected therapist in my field most of the time. Just not on Tuesday nights.
Yeah, but I'd be posting food shit in there sometimes, and you and Jake are like, yum. So I'm getting a feel for what I'm. You know what I mean? It's like similarly, food tastes clogged arteries. Maybe. If I'm gonna be in there, dude, I want to be in like Forrest or Roger. I think. So that's my choice. Thank you guys a ton for doing this with me. I think this has been a crazy good time, and I think we discussed these movies pretty well.
Now let me penetrate that error for a moment.
Dave.
Let us do our outros.
Okay.
So let's start with you, Forrest. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right, I'm Forrest Bennett, based in Long Island, New York. I'm active on. I'm an independent film producer. Also active on a couple of other web shows, including Under the Radar and Script Club, which is on on a YouTube channel called Evil Greg.
Awesome.
And you know what? If you guys don't hear from me for a while, it just means I'm inside Forrest. The dude who took my place is the beta unit, and he'll pay all of my bills. He's
Heading over to you, Roger. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself and what you do?
I'm Roger Proctor, car salesman. I live in Florida. I also have a pretty decent anime collection. I also run Animes and Collections and Company. That's one of the best sites you can possibly go on Facebook to find information about anime in general.
Alrighty.
Good time.
also one of the best social groups for anime because I go on some of those other ones, dude. And they make me feel like I should probably carry a switchblade on me.
Oh my god, that's terrible. Oh my word. Welcome, Mo. You're definitely welcome over here.
Thanks, man. It's been a relief.
Mo, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, my name's Mosley. I'm mostly just a fella who likes movies. But I also do a really awesome series called Full Moon Madness that you guys should check out on my channel right now. It's the only thing that I've done in a while that was worth a damn. And I'm pretty fucking proud of it. Also, lots more coming soon when that's concerned. And, you know, if you're a fan of those movies from the 90s, mostly from the 90s, some of them are from the 70s, some from the 80s. But, you know, I think the video store days, the 90s, is really what it calls back to.
Mm-hmm.
Get out there and check it out, man. A lot of you guys might have forgot some of those movies. Or, you know, never got around to checking them out, but you might remember their face when you see them again right there. So, cool stuff going on over there. At some point, I'd like to get into reviewing more comic books again, but in the meantime, I got a lot of Judge Dredd, Alien, you know, all types of cool stuff. OG X-Men reviewed over on the Happy Hour Comic Club channel, so I'm going to take the opportunity to plug that right now. So that's about what I got going on. You guys are always welcome, and you know,
thank you.
Yeah,
alrighty. Heading over to Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right, I'm Jake. I am a movie fan, collector, anime fan and collector, and just general media fan and collector here in Central Virginia. I'm co-host of Septum Sin versus the World. I'll let him tell you a little more about that, except that next Monday we'll be discussing a show of my choosing on our Anime Anticlimax series. We'll be discussing the short series Death Parade, which is a really fun show. Hopefully y'all will join us for that. Meanwhile, I have a couple of gigs outside of it, and I am very excited that my new business, a plant nursery, has made its first official sale as of today. So we are now in
Congrats.
business. So very cool.
Congratulations.
Jacob, you might be interested to know that I'm about to start out on a bird watching quest. I got a very nice Canon camera, and I got a
Cool.
book called The Birds of Oregon on order
Cool.
that I'm going to be using for that, as well as several
Very cool.
personalized stamps that I got to stamp those pages. But we might kickstart that nature shit over there. Who knows?
Good
man?
times.
Cool to talk about some bird watching at some point. So hit me up, bro. We'll talk about those little birdies.
Going over to Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm Septum Sen of Septum Sen versus the World. We love physical media here. We are dedicated to most of the forms of physical media, though we do tend to concentrate on movies, series, anime, whatever. And this time, of course, other than our normal pickups and somebody moving around over there, other than pickups and new release information, we do also do a couple other side stuff, reviews, of course, as Jake had mentioned, anime discussions. And on top of that, we've been doing a little bit of gaming on that. I've been going through my entire game collection. Last week was PlayStation 1. This week will be PlayStation 2. And we'll be doing a playthrough of Alan Wake, me and my wife.
Ooh.
So that'll be fun to see. We've been working on the sound, but it's going to be improving as we go. We have been trying to figure it out because OBS is not very good about capturing sound. So we're working through it. But we've recorded quite a few parts, so this will be the debut of part 1. So it's going to be fun.
And let it not be said too, Brandon and Jake are like the best physical media update that I've ever found on YouTube on a weekly basis. So if you want to know what's coming out week to week and where it's coming out and how it's coming out, those are the dudes to see. For sure.
And we always cover what we screw up.
And there was a lot of stuff this week. It was a lot of stuff this week.
If you're an anime fan, you should check out this week because there was a lot released. And as a favor to Animazing, we always cover the anime first.
Thank you.
But I also help with Inside Movies Galore when it comes to the scheduling. Now, our month is over, but our Meet the Cast is not. As we move into June, of course, we will start off with Forrest's picks, and if you want, you can introduce your picks for next week if you'd like. Forrest.
All right. Next week's picks will be two movies that are near and dear to me. 1995, Kevin Smith's Mallrats from 1995.
Hell yeah!
And then my all-time favorite movie, James Cameron's Aliens from 1986.
All right. We can do that, Aliens.
One I like a lot and one not so much. But, Forrest, you hit two of one that I need to watch in my collection. So, good job.
We'll excuse your heathen ways for now.
The problem is I don't think I'm going to get to watch all the bonus features on that Mallrats set. I wish I could.
So many cool things on that on those Arrow sets. So awesome.
Weird little connection. I'm pretty sure that our dude in The Last Starfighter had the same haircut as Ripley in Aliens.
That little 80s fro.
Yeah, that puffy 80s like power chick furl,
Alrighty. And my name is David Streggy. I am one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore, where we set aside our differences and go on about films and see where what we like, what we dislike, our favorites, all that kind of jazz, and we have a blast. And I think we kind of had a sci-fi blast today. So definitely check these last two discussions out. They were definitely very much fun. And we'll be back next week. But I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I go on about my videos that I pick up on physical media and go on about my thoughts, what I think of films in general. So definitely check that channel out. I know just recently today I discussed a mini series that was on Sci-Fi Channel, directed by Leigh Scott, called The Witches of Oz. So check that out. Went on with my Croatian friend Boris, and it was good times. So thank you for listening. Have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are. And please just stay out of each other's space from now on.
Well, I think we should talk about the fact that nobody running this shit has Kelsey Grammer hair. We can work on yours, Dave. Though we'll get it there.
I definitely don't. I definitely don't want to be Mr. Clean anytime soon.
I'll rock the Kelsey cut if it'll get me like an up in my say around here.
I think you'll still have that Nordic hair for a while.
Well,